that we've, yep, thank you, from the ones that that we've had before. So I'm just gonna run everyone in no more than 10 minutes just through what we're trying to achieve with the project. And in the meantime, Lewis will join us, and he has some thoughts he'd like to share on the direction for this project in terms of how we can get access to the data in different formats that we could potentially export it, such as XML, JSON, the things that that he's been working on, and he'll be talking to us about it. And then after we do that, we will go on to create a few more user stories throughout the rest of the session. Right, I do apologize if you see me kind of going offline for just 10 or 15 minutes. I'm really sick. I probably shouldn't be here at all. I've been with a cold, common cold, but I'll try my best to walk you through what we're trying to achieve with this project. So yeah, we're going to go through what ASVS is in a nutshell. Yep. So you're probably all familiar with the application security verification standard. So this is an OWASP project that it's one of the flagship projects. It's really good. One of the reasons why I think it's so successful overall is that it is different from most of the other standards that you see out there. There tend to be a lot of bureaucrats putting things on paper, and what makes OWASP ASVS different, in my opinion, is that it's really led by practitioners. So usually the example that I like to give is that the ASVS standard has for at least 5 to 7 years been saying that there really is not much point. It's actually detrimental to change passwords every 60 days. And the ASVS has been saying that for a long time, even before most of the security standards still don't say any of that, right? So it's really driven by people that understand what they're talking about, which is one of the reasons I really like it. So the ASVS itself is broken down into a number of different domains: architecture, design, and threat modeling, authentication. Yeah, it's all of those that you see on the screen. So in all of them, this is the standard itself is built a bit like a checklist. So you can use ASVS to go through each of the areas and see your internal applications, how they're faring against all of those requirements. So there's still a bit to do on this. So what you see in different colors are the areas of the standard that we've covered, that we've created user stories for so far. So there's still quite a bit to go through. Yeah, I'm expecting the week after next to spend a good time of that week working on a few more, and we'll work on a few more user stories as part of the session as well. So the reason why this project was created, the question is, why not just use ASVS? And I think, in my opinion, I think the OWASP project has very good documentation, namely the OWASP ASVS standard, which usually serves as requirements. So a lot of security teams these days just use that for their application security requirements. And there's also very good information out there with regards to how you implement these things in the form of the OWASP cheat sheets project, which is absolutely wonderful, and the OWASP ASVS 4.0 testing guide, which has a lot of tests, mostly written in Python, for some of these things on how to validate ASVS. What I think is missing, and the reason why we got together to create this project, is there really is this black box in the middle, right? So what happens in an agile process, and how we can integrate ASVS into an agile process. And that's why this project was created, to kind of serve as this bridge, ideally providing a list of off-the-shelf user stories that you can adapt in your own context, but to make it easy to not just have kind of a checklist that what the bureaucrats and GRC people would expect and want to work on, but having something else that can help you kind of grab that, associate with the user story, and then use the guidance that already exists in OWASP cheat sheets, etc., to give you a bit of guidance on how to actually do it. So that's what we're trying to achieve with this project. So the benefits that it gives, I think there are benefits to both the engineering teams and risk and compliance teams. So on the engineering side of things, it gives you kind of off-the-shelf user stories that you can use and adapt to your own local environment. Yeah, that's kind of the main thing. You can contextualize your acceptance criteria. And for risk and compliance teams, I think it allows them to frame their requirements to a level that is more comprehensible on the engineering and development side of things. And there's the other benefit to risk and compliance people is that it forces us to start breaking down our kind of one-liner security requirements into parts, right, using Gherkin syntax, for instance. And I think that is going to be moving forward. And I think the changes in the industry are already happening. I think more and more risk and compliance people that can codify their requirements as code are in their own, they don't have competition right now, because I think it's really something that accelerates adoption and accelerates how effective risk and compliance teams can be. So this is really to help this transition. So someone that is only used to dealing with static sets of requirements to start thinking about how we would break that down in order to support engineering teams a bit better, and potentially serve as a gateway to actually get to codify your policy requirements as code. So it's basically a tool to facilitate communication. So, yep, we talked about it. Gatekeepers usually don't really like the spreadsheet format. It's easy to check things against it, but engineers tend not to like those approaches. And most technical teams already use user stories, so why wouldn't we? So user story is a small piece of work that represents some value to an end user and can be delivered during a sprint. So this is one of the generally accepted definitions for what a user story is. And there's also the what is called the invest criteria that helps you go through the story that you've built and understand if it's good or not according to these criteria. So it should be independent, that can be developed in any sequence, and changes shouldn't affect other things. Negotiable, right? And I think this is, again, where it's key to for governance teams is you give them a user story and you know that the team will figure out how to do it themselves. So valuable, delivers the test unit of value. Estimable, so you should be able to understand how long it's going to take you. Small, so you should be able to go through the whole cycle, design, coding, and testing, and ideally creating continuous tests in one sprint. And it should be testable, so having some clear acceptance criteria so that yeah, everyone knows if it's been implemented appropriately or not. So there's still a conversation to be had around the persona. So for the time being, most stories that we've created as part of this project are as a security engineer in terms of the persona. That may change, would be good to hear the people's opinions about it, but at the moment that's how we started. And a story is really as a persona type of user. I want an action so that I can have some benefit or take some value out of that. Apologies, just give me. I do apologize. I'm sure no one wants to hear me blow my nose. So this is an example of a user story with a feature definition, right? So the feature would be HTTP response content type header specifying the safe character sets. And as a security engineer, I want to only allow safe character sets in HTTP responses so that I can prevent unsafe character sets, which could obfuscate malicious activity, right? Bit of a winded way of adhering to writing the user story for that particular requirement. And then we could write the scenario, and this is where the Gherkin syntax comes in. So in relation to 14.4.1, which is on HTTP security headers, we have this requirement of the safe character sets. that is specified as UTF-8 or ISO 88591. And the way to write the Gherkin syntax for this particular requirement would be given an HTTP response and an HTTP security header in it. When I specify the allowed content type, then I only allow UTF-8 or ISO 8551. Yeah, that's the only thing that I should allow. Right? And if security people can start writing this, which is kind of breakdown of logic, then the next step to actually codify it as in a policy as code DSL, here we have the example of chef inspec, becomes easier, right? So here, basically what we're saying is we've got headers. In those headers, I have content type, and I expect the response to be charset UTF-8, right? And I'm confident that there are probably a lot of programming constructs that a lot of people can't, in compliance and risk teams can't do, but at least getting very close to being able to write this, I think it's within the realm of possibility if you get comfortable in at least breaking it down on a Gherkin syntax. So that's another of the goals of this project is to kind of help commoditize and give people some information about how they can go about the journey of learning how to codify policy statements as code. Yeah, and this is what we have tended to do in these sessions is either break out in teams and each team working on a number of stories and collaborate on developing them. I'm not sure we have that many people today to warrant multiple rooms, but yeah, we've been basically choosing a particular set of requirements and then writing a user story for them. So I will show you some examples that we already have on the project. So I'm going to put the link here. Some of you may not have on your site. Okay, so this is kind of where we've got to so far. The part that has more of the links to compliance as code DSLs is on configuration verification. So not all of them have at the moment. But here we can, so the one that we were talking about, 14.4.1, and we have, yep, basically this is the type of structure that we have. We put in the Gherkin syntax, we say what would be the expected responses that we would have. And then we have, in this example, so two pieces of chef inspec code that are the way to automate and to verify this programmatically. I will just show you another example. So content type no sniff, that's 14.4.4 in the ASVS standard. So again, we've got the feature name. There's a new line missing there, but then we have the Gherkin syntax, and then we've got a validation of in again chef inspec. We don't have open policy agent for this one. Yeah, and this is basically the structure of the project and what we're trying to achieve here. Any comments, questions, anything you'd like to share at this point? No? Okay. So Lewis, you're with us now? He'll be here in a minute. Okay, so Lewis will now he will join us in 1 minute, and he will be leading us through the part around exports and how we can normalize the aspects of the project, and then we'll be working on a few more user stories as a group. Dennis now joins us as well, so Please just
Hey,
bear
Mario.
with us for a minute, and Louis will be here to lead these the other part.
Cool.
Okay, Dennis?
Yeah, all good. Sorry I was a bit late because the last session we ended up on a big discussion about graphs and scaling and analyzing Helm charts. It's actually really cool, man. Like the guys that he shared a really cool tool that analyzes Helm charts and visualize and puts them in the graph, and I think has a huge amount of potential, right? Because that's, in fact, the irony here. We should be, ironically, some of the stuff that you have here in ASVS, that will give you the data, right? So you can write this, so you can actually start to enforce it, right? Because I still feel that sometimes the missing piece of the puzzle here is that we need to connect this to reality, right? We need to connect this to an actual deployment. And guess what? These days, a lot of this information is on a Helm chart, right?
Yep, I agree.
So
for those who use it, but
yeah. So the Helm chart tool was called Chekhov. I'll put the link on the chat.
Oh yeah, the new version has a graph support. I haven't tested that feature, but I love Chekhov. I use Chekhov.
Oh, yes. All right, cool. Yeah, yeah. So that's the tool, right? And I think they are really onto something. I feel that they need to kind of go more to a sort of YAML kind of style of storing the data, right? So I think they pumping it into Network X too soon, and then Network X is a nightmare to serialize. To it's good to visualize, right? But I think if they could take charts to YAML, and then one of the views is even Neo4j or others, right, or Viz.js, etc. But if you have an independent schema that is already quite massaged based on what we care about from an Helm chart, then I think that's insanely powerful.
Yep. Makes sense. Hey, Louis.
Hi. How are you today?
Very good. How are you?
Fine. Sorry for the short delay, but there are some family responsibilities that one cannot avoid, and then just get
the feeling
as soon as you can to the fun part of the day, right?
Yeah. At least hopefully your internet is working today, man.
Oh God, that was so stressful yesterday. I was like, I didn't know what to do. I mean, I had a moment of illumination in which I just said, okay, well, I'll join with my phone, and then I'll just direct the camera to the screen. And
it kind of worked, right? It was unconventional, but it worked really well, right?
It's not how I intended that to work, but yeah, it's the first time it happens, right? So I moved to this house in July, in August, early August, late July, and I never had one internet drop connection like yesterday.
Bound to happen during a session.
Oh yeah, of course, it's part of being alive, right?
Exactly.
Unpredictable things happen.
Let me just place that by that.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Yep, go for it.
Right. So, would you like to kind of give us that overview, Louis, that you've been talking about the
yes,
the formats and all that?
So I'm incredibly proud to announce that the OWASP project merged my pull request to have make files and a build environment. So my plan is to make a full session out of this with nice slides for the following Open Security Summit in January, I think you said, Dennis. So let me, I'm figuring out what the best way is to guide you through this, probably through the code itself. So I have it open here. Give me a second because I just had it open. ASVS. OWASP, yes. So I'll share my screen in a second. Just figure out this is the place to share my screen. Now, which screen will I share? The one I'm looking into. Yeah, that one. And share it. And I see a couple of comments. Okay, but they're not for me. Okay, so this is the OWASP ASVS website, or not website, the GitHub repo. And there's a 5.0 version now, which wasn't there a few weeks back, right? So that's part of the result of me merging. Family calling. I'm incredibly sorry. I might need to answer that for 1 second. Just a second.
Mario, you want to just walk us through the changes that and the?
I was going to learn about them as well. So he was going. So yeah, I'm looking forward to his explanation.
So there's a 4.2 and a 5.0 version. And I'm having a bit of a discussion with someone else who helped approve the pull request in how to manage the make files, because the make file is something new you will see here in version 5.0. So let me guide you through the make file first, or through compiling. So I called it compiling, but it could be building the document because you're not really compiling. So what happened is I created the make file because make is the common mechanism in the Unix world or Linux world to create things, right? So you make a make all, and make targets, and make things. Now, making a document requires LaTeX, you know, this LaTeX document building thing. So there's a series of dependencies. We'll go through the Docker file, no worries. But the most important dependencies is pandoc, which is a universal document translator, I would say. You can create from Markdown PDFs, you can create from Markdown HTML, or the other way around, from HTML Markdown, or Word documents, or a lot of formats. So in able to reduce the amount of dependencies that you have, my idea was, why not build a build environment that is capsuled inside a container, and you just pass as a volume to the container the contents of the repository where you want to build, right? So the idea is actually quite simple. It's something that has been done for C and C++ a lot, but it's not something that usually is done for Panda. Yeah, okay. So the idea here is you build the container image because it's not yet pushed to the Docker Hub. I refuse to be responsible for an image that will be terribly outdated and have someone download that. And in the end, it's something you can build for yourself. It's something that you might need in your CI at some point, but it's not something that I think I want to maintain, right? So if the ASVS OWASP group want to maintain this thing and create some sort of automatic update for the base layers, I'm happy to go with that. I don't want to be responsible for someone getting popped by using one of these things, right? So I don't use it. Here's the make file. If you just copy paste this instruction, it will create a container called ASVS document builder. And now what you need to do to run it is point it to the repository you want to build. So it could be either 4.0 or 5.0. And that's it. Make will build it. That's all there is. It's magic, right? What this means is you can now adapt this to your company, to your organization with a lot less effort. You can embed this building environment in your CI. And now you can keep your policies as Markdown in Git or in GitLab or whatever you're using for version control. And you can create, every time there's a change, a new document. You have perfect traceability of when which change was made by whom. So from a policy perspective, it's just fantastic, right? And on the other hand, because we're creating it from Markdown, and the OWASP project has already created these export files. Now this export files understands Markdown and parses Markdown. It imports this ASVS class that is there, and it allows you to export into JSON, JSON flat, XML, and CSV, comma separated values, right? So, and this class is basically just a Python converter. It was created by Josh Grossman and Johnny Smithing, and it is ported from the mobile ASVS. And it's a lot of Python. And basically what they're doing is just walking through the Markdown, looking for headers, putting them together, and then just matching through regular expressions the statements, and building a dictionary. They're building a dictionary in memory, which you can then export using JSON, XML, whatever you want, right? So it's just that. So basically what I did when I created the files I shared with you, Mario, for what we're doing with Gherkin is extend this. I loaded through the ASVS through the ASVS class in Python. I loaded all the Markdown, and now I could parse and generate whatever I wanted as output. So that's how I created with a little bit of Jupyter Labs, the output that led to my contribution to the project, right? That's how I created all the files in a few minutes. And all the files, every requirement looks exactly the same because it's a template. So that allows us that gives us a lot of flexibility to pivot from this or our own format for the Markdown with the ASVS requirements, with Gherkin stories, or whatever else we want to do, right? And we can translate this into whatever we want. We can create customized lists that only have level 1, level 2, level 3 requirements, because in the end, all of this is, especially since you can export it as JSON, you can just do JSON queries and just get all level 1 requirements for a given chapter from JSON directly. So this was all previous art. It was there. I just moved it into, I just cleaned a little bit here, the whole thing, and created the makefile. So makefile is standard new makefile. So the first thing I did was define some directories that are necessary for building. I'm creating a blob where you can find all the Markdown files that interest us. I'm creating targets that need to be built. And I create the target name of the document, right? So the document here is called OWASP AppSec Verification Standard 4.0. Since it's a 5.0 version, someone should pop this up to 5.0, right? So this should be 5.0 because this is the 5.0 version. I create some flags for compiling the text. So if I'm doing pandoc and translating to docx or to open document format or to LaTeX or to Markdown, these are the flags that I want to pass to pandoc. Again, pandoc is the universal translator. These are the targets that are defined. So the target all creates PDF, docx, JSON, JSON flat, CSV, and XML. So if you have looked at the releases from OWASP ASVS, that's all the formats they offer. And they are created in this makefile like this. So basically what happens is Markdown will be built. So the first thing is that if you look at the current version of the ASVS, let me open the current version of the ASVS. Is it this one? Yeah, it's this one. No, this is already modified. No, this is not the one I wanted to show. Sorry about that. Give me a second. I'll show it right away. Yeah. Yeah, this is it. So one thing that annoyed me, and I created a pull request, and that was part of the beginning of this journey, is you get the CWE number, but you have no hyperlink to jump to the CWE number, which is, I mean, it's annoying. It's not a deal breaker, but it's just annoying. I don't want to copy the number, go to CWE image or whatever. I just want to click on it and jump there. So one of the things that I'm doing is, or that I propose doing for the project is, I translate the existing Markdown files, I recreate them somewhere else in the build directory, so I don't change the original files, and I just apply Seth to change the fourth column and make it a hyperlink with the vulnerability number. So what that creates is a version that has hyperlinks of the document, right? So I'm cheating a little bit, showing you the thing, but and the same happens. And then from this Markdown, we build everything else. So from this Markdown, I built the PDF, I built the TeX files, because if you want to debug the PDF, you need to create the TeX files, because in the end, it's a LaTeX, XeTeX build process that's happening behind the scenes. And then, as you see, there's a lot of pandoc here, and then there's Python and the export tool calling JSON, JSON flat, CSV, and XML, and you just output everything out. And that's it. And then in target clean, you just clean the directory. So that's all the magic there is. I hope it makes sense so far. So let's stop making this boring. Let's show how it works, right? Docker images, ASVS. No, images. Okay, plural. Oh, come on. So this is the image. The image is ASVS document builder. It's tag latest because I created it, so I don't really have to pin it down to anything. I just created it in my machine. And it's unfortunately, because of LaTeX itself, big. There's no way to make it small. So it's LaTeX, and I promise that's the smallest I could get it. I couldn't make it any smaller. I'm installing the most essential packages and only that which is absolutely needed to work. And that's as small as I could get it. We're working on getting maybe a few megabytes down because of fonts that we're not using. So that will reduce maybe 100 to 100 megabytes, but it's still very big. But it doesn't matter. So the point here is, I don't even have to do a lot, right? So I do Docker run. I don't want to keep any logs or anything. I mount the volume, which is the current directory, as the folder data, because that's where it expects to run and to find the make file. And I just say, this is the document builder. And that's it. When I click it, if I did everything right, you see the translation process from the Markdown files to the customized Markdown files with meter links. Now it is building the PDFs. It is building now the LaTeX. Here you see using LaTeX. It is creating the application security guidelines. So it created one, it created the other one, and it will work and create them. Probably we could create them in parallel. So when I was doing a lot of C development, I was playing with Make and giving it enough cores to be able to process in parallel and be a lot faster. But actually, it's pretty fast, pretty decent. I mean, it's less than a minute to build everything. And then you can check in the build directory what it created. And I was playing with it a little bit before the presentation, so that's why you see different versions, right? So this is the one that was created this instant. This is the one that was created 2 hours ago. So that's the vanilla OWASP without any modifications. So what have I changed? So you will see that I changed the target name in the makefile. That's why it is called Company Application Security Guideline. Why? Because I want to adopt ASVS and make it my own. I want to have them with my corporate fonts, corporate image, corporate colors, corporate template page. I want to have it in any way that makes sense, right? So I can start by changing the name of the document. So now every single output of doc, PDF, JSON, CSV, XML, etc., will be called Company Application Security Guidelines. So change company for your own, change the name from Application Security Guidelines to Application Security Requirements. It doesn't matter. It's a name, right? So you can change the name. Now it's flexible. I'm working in making a few more changes here, but I mean, that's about it. And you can see here that I also changed in the header the name. So let me go into the header. That's, I think, a good place to go. So it's header and header tech. Quit. So remember, this is LaTeX, and LaTeX has headers, things that are not part of the document, but that set how the document will look and feel like. And then you have the content of the tech files. So here is where you defined the packages that you will be using and all that. So you can just keep it as it is. The important thing here is that we are using the fancy header and footer. So for the footer information, we're saying, okay, we will have the document name on the left side. We have the page number and the OWASP logo. So you can change the name to be AppSec standard. You can change it to be whatever you want, right? You can change the image to be your corporate image, to be your department's logo if you have one. And what happens when you compile it is right there visible, right? So I changed the name here, and now every single page has this in the center and the OWASP logo on the left. So I don't know, I could look for a nice, I don't know, let's say, so companies I know, so Glasswall, PNG icon, I don't know, let's, oh, no, that doesn't look very nice. SVG icon, no, Glasswall, glasswall.com or .co.uk, what is it? Is this Tinisys? No, that's not Tinisys.
No, it's the Glasswall Solutions. Sorry, the other one.
That one there. Okay, so I'm trying to steal one of your icons, right? So this is your icon, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm just gonna steal it. Save image as logo, Glasswall logo, logo, just to make sure that it's the right logo. And just let me put it somewhere where I can copy it into my WSL. Local Glasswall logo. Okay, so I will. Now it's in the images. I know I need to play with my fonts here with the colors, but I will put it in images, right? So create cd dev ASVS. .5.0 ASVS. Okay, and then CP from local, Glasswall logo into images. No, images. I have images here, so images 5.0. 5.0 images. done. So let me name this. No. A. So I don't want it to be called bash. This is working ASVS. So I use screen and I use a lot of Linux things. I prefer to use Linux than Windows. So sorry if I'm jumping a bit. So this is not bash, but nvim ASVS. So now I can more easily work within them, right? So and now I can say nvim, what is it? Templates, and it was a header LaTeX. So I don't want OWASP logo, header, whatever. I want glass wall logo. No. Images. Set the 5.0 images, and I have classwall logo.png right there. Okay. If the gods of the demo are with me, I'll just steal this command here and run it in the other window. And the beauty of this is that I can even show this live. So as this runs, it will dynamically, oh no, it will not dynamically reload. I need to copy, right? So this, I haven't yet figured out how to teach Windows to look into the ASVS folders for these changes. So I need to manually copy it once it's done. But that's just a second. So you will see here, the glasswall logo will appear right there. CP build company guidelines PDF into local. Now you saw that. Now, of course, Glasswall is using a very chic logo that's transparent. Doesn't really help my case, but I hope you appreciate that. It's supposed to say Glasswall right here, right? So I'm sorry.
Well, it says it's just actually the good news is it had a little bit of a color, right? The background, yeah, because it's a white logo, right, on a transparent thing.
I know you were using transparencies. I was not thinking straight, but I think that the important thing here is it was trivial, right?
Mm.
That's something that you can do once, and it will be permanent throughout merges and everything that you do with the root with the main trunk upstream repository, right? So you can keep on merging changes from them, but it will still look like your own.
No, I think it's very powerful. Well, especially when you start to modify some, but like remove some of the ones that are not relevant, right? So you're going to take a document which is massive to a document that is actually now quite consumable, even creating different versions for different teams.
Sure. And I mean, one thing that I did in the previous company I was working for was enhancing this table with our own corporate policy and the statement that corresponded most closely to that one. So basically, in the Markdown files here, I could show you that I mean, it takes no time to do that kind of gimmick, right? So I don't know. Files are located in the English version. So I go to the English version, I take a look at it, and then I have here the header YAML, which is important because that's what Pandoc is expecting. So remember, we have different layers of abstraction, again, just like yesterday. So we have Pandoc, we have LaTeX, and they work together. So I have to give LaTeX what LaTeX needs, and I need to give Pandoc what Pandoc needs. So Pandoc needs that. I'll just show it very briefly. nvim 0x00 header. And here you can see that I can change the title of the PDF, Application Security Guidelines. I can call it whatever I want, right? And if you are very fancy, like the company I used to work for was, you have your own corporate fonts. So you can incorporate those into the build environment. We can look at that later if you want. But I mean, for most cases, I don't know many companies that are that fancy that they create their own custom fonts, right? These are good enough. You can use Roboto, or you can use many others. And yes, we need Chinese Japanese because there's one encoding thing somewhere there in which the Japanese A is there. So there's this symbol that's A in Japanese. And I think there's another kanji thing there. So we need them, unfortunately. So you import a lot of fonts for 2 characters in the whole document, but doesn't matter. And here you set things that are important. You set here the geometry. You say the font, the margins, how wide you want the margins on all sides, whether you want a title page like this one, or whether the text should start right after this one, whether you want to use row colors for tables. So if you look at the requirements, no, this is not using row colors. I'm not sure why. We should be using row colors. I'm not sure what happened here. Maybe it's the one of the changes that were done when importing. But you can change the date. You can change the subtitle. You can change the title. You can add here again. I mean, if I had a nicer Glasswall or Open Security Summit logo, I could set the Open Security logo here, and then it would appear right here, right? So you can see here the text. So again, if I want to change it, I can say this is my
So just going a little bit to the next step. So the idea of also for this is now you can start to incorporate a lot of the ideas from this, from the stuff you guys been doing here, right? Of the the user stories. We can now embed that into this document, right?
Yes, that's exactly the point. So the idea here is I can rebuild it, and then in a second or two I can show you that I just changed this with a line. So it's very easy. It takes a few seconds once the build environment is done, just to make the document and changes, and that shows you that you can embed this in the CI. Now, for what we have been working on over the last few months. Okay, so now I can repeat CP, company, application, local, and then you see I just made a change, right? So this is incredibly powerful to make the changes. Now, if I translate this to, oh God, what is it?
This is already integrated with using GitHub.
This is now part. I mean, this is. Let me see if I don't leak any. Git remote -v. Yeah, I'm not leaking anything here. So this is my repository. That is the upstream repository from OWASP. And this has been merged. Remember, I showed you this running at the very beginning within, I just lost it. Excuse me for that. ASVS. No, that's mine. I don't want to go to mine. I want to go to upstream. And this is now in 5.0. So there's a Docker directory, there's a make file. This is running. So Ike, which is working with me on this, decided that it was easier to create a document that works around it. I'm not sure we need it really, but it doesn't matter. So the make file is running. If you run the commands, so this is what I was showing you, and this is the command I have been running. So this is already part of mainstream, upstream. So now you can start doing it your own. Now, what are the next steps? the next step is for me, I mean, I could try to just copy the makefile and create the plain PDF into the ASVS that we have with Mario. So give me a second. ASVS.
The question I was asking before was, is this integrated with GitHub Actions?
It can be integrated. Now, the only problem is that the container is not in a public repository. So for GitHub Actions, I think the container needs to be lookable, searchable, findable, whatever.
Not necessarily. You could build a container. You can do exactly what I did here. You can build this. You know, it'll take a little bit, but it doesn't matter. In fact, GitHub Actions is very fast, right?
I say yes. I have not the mileage with GitHub Actions to say yes with absolute certainty. So I know it is possible.
Yeah, we do. No, it's possible. That's what we do. We use GitHub Actions to build containers. In fact, we actually use GitHub Actions to build a lot of our CI pipelines bits, right, including containers, and then even publish it. So you can definitely do that.
As I said, I'm pretty sure it is possible. I have not tried it out. So what I'm doing is the hand process, but calling Docker, passing a path, and having the output be the documents you want is something that is the bread and butter of every single CI out there. GitHub Actions or Jenkins or whatever you're doing.
Yep.
So in that sense, I don't think that's a huge problem. So yes, you can embed it, and if I change to the one here I have, let me see if I don't leak any credentials when I do a remote. No, I don't think I leak anything. So this is Mario's project, but Mario has moved it to the OSS, Open Security Summit, project, ASVS user stories.
Yeah, so this is where I was thinking that we can add it, right? So we can add the GitHub action to this repo, right? To basically build the document. I don't know, Mario, is that something you want to see happen?
Yes, sounds like a great idea.
What I have been discussing with Mario and my dream scenario, right? So my end game scenario for these ASVS user stories is twofold. So it's nice to have a PDF, it's nice to have JSON, it's nice to have all that, but localhost 8080.
Well, I was, you're going to say you need a website, man. This needs to be like something browsable, right?
We don't need a website. Someone already did the work.
Yeah, there you go.
You know these guys, right?
Yeah.
So now, the only thing, and it's a big thing, is incorporating our checklists here, right? So what we want to do is basically, I don't know. So this is one list I have, right? But you can add results or generate requirements. So basically what these guys are doing is, okay, what are you doing? Okay, I'm doing a web application. Level 2, I have some confidential data, or it is web facing, and I want, I don't know, data protection. Do you need general data protection? Yes. Client-side data protection, cookies? Nah, not really. I want to know what to do with personal PAI, right? And then you say, okay, it's a new feature or part of the current feature. And then you can say, okay, file upload. So I will be uploading personal identifiable information in some sort of story that makes sense in the context of the application, right? And you click on that, and if the gods of the demo are with me, magic will happen and it will not be stuck. So now we have 28 requirements in the file uploads, right? So I have the 5 and the 8 chapter. I can click on it, and it has already a lot of information. So this information they took from the CWE. So this is the information that corresponds to the CWE of the corresponding of the matching requirement, 833 in this case. Sometimes, like in this case, what kind of luck did I have? They already have rules for SemGrep, CodeQL, SonarQube, or whatever. So the testing is really fast. So that they don't have it in every for everyone, but they already have some. And it has this compliance thing, result, not result. So to be honest, I wouldn't use this system, SKF, as the place I want to track this. So my end goal is to get the stories that we have here. Now the stories are here. Now you get the stories that you need and create an export out of it, or maybe even a direct link with OAuth or whatever to your Azure DevOps, your Jira, whatever you're using, right? So you might be using one tool or the other, but this is what I would like to achieve, right? Because now I can have not only these AppSec requirements, but pretty much any policy in the company in here. Because for any given system, for any given application, you might be subject to a lot of different policies or legal requirements. So now, yes, ASVS is a dream come true, right? But it doesn't cover everything for ISO 27001 or this or the other thing, because the focus is the different one from ISO 27001, but you still want to be certifiable, right? So some things might be part of this or some, but in the end you want to keep track of it. So following your thought of keeping your risk management in Jira, why not also the requirements and the compliance in Jira, right? So this plays into Mario's compliance as code thing, in which you have your compliance is tracked in your Azure DevOps, and you can just make queries of your Azure DevOps board or your Jira tickets and see based on tags whether project X, product X has complied with all these requirements that are open for the version, right? So I don't know, I see a lot of potential here. I like a lot the security knowledge framework. I think they're behind ASVS upstream by a couple of versions. So they're maybe in 3 point something and not made the jump to 4 point something. But one thing that I like is that they have these knowledge bases. So they have path traversal examples. So this helps your developers find the knowledge they need for when they need it. And they even have labs. So you can even get some images that they have produced for trying things out. So I don't understand how this works, but now since you have, I don't know, authentication bypass here, click here, start the machine, whatever not. So I haven't played with all of it, right? I'm concentrating mostly on the ASVS, but my dream is to generate a custom checklist and feed it into this automatically. Feed it into this project, right? Either as a contribution to the project or as something that you do internally within your company.
So I reached out about a year ago to the SKF. There were two guys, I think, if I recall correctly. I reached out to them. We kind of discussed that we had to catch up at a later date, but then they never came back to me. But it's definitely something. Dennis, do you know someone?
The heads of this project are siblings, as far as I know. At least they share the same last name, okay. Tecate. So it's Glenn and I forget the other name, but it's I believe they're siblings, they're brothers, and they're behind this project. So
yeah, but I think, look, the best way to do this is kind of the way, you we've done the the other integration, right? Like, I think there's nothing stopping us to actually basically connect those dots, right? Where ideally because you need to run it locally too, right? It's one of those where you need an environment where you can experiment, you can see the best way. So I think the interesting thing here is that to get these guys, they already have a Docker version, right? It's like, how can we now, because the principle that you had there, which is you start a Docker, you mount data, right? So if you have one where you mount the use cases that we have here, then we can start to see where's the best place in here to make that change so that it consumes it. So I don't know the architecture behind the scenes, but it should also be a lot of it should be Markdown, right? And
I mean, the architecture is not quite trivial. This is Angular UI, an API, MQTT for some reason. I mean, it's not a trivial thing to work, but actually what we care about is data. So we will not be changing the application so much as just creating another data source.
Yeah.
And in that sense, you can just hook into the initial bootstrap script that creates a database with the items, because all of this is a very simple database.
But I think, look, ultimately, the kind of project, right? And I think the philosophy here should be that you need to take your data to these other projects, right? So it's almost like, instead of giving them the problem, if we can find a way to integrate with some of these guys and then make it easy, then they're most likely to adopt it, right? And I feel
that works. That's what I did with OWASP ASVS, right? So exactly. I solved a problem that I had, and I said, hey guys, I think it's quite useful for the community of OWASP to be able to recreate the documents in the pipeline, to create it through GitLab Actions or GitHub Actions. Here it is. It's for you, right? So I built it because I needed it. It's here for you. Take it or leave it. It took them about a year to merge the pull request, but now it's there. Now everyone can profit from it.
Exactly. Where are you guys? You're using the channel, right, on Slack, right, to collaborate on this, right? Is that the best place to have threads about this?
Probably, yeah.
For lack of a different common platform, since we work for different companies, yes, it's either that or Twitter, but sure.
Okay,
I mean,
no, I'm thinking, like, I think this the thing I feel to do here is that we can use GitHub to track issues, right? Yep. It's almost like we should look at it as an engineering project, right? We define, look, the objective is we want to integrate the data that you have in here. So we need to just understand a bit of Angular, understand a bit of what's going on. I think some of this, if we start the movement, it's easy for those guys to help, because almost what you want is for them to say, oh, like, look here, look there. We already have some solutions for that. If you go to them and say, look, we created all this, it's harder, because I also feel that there's probably a bit of work to do to get the data for this project in a way that is also easy to consume, right?
That was going to be my next thing, right? Yeah. So in order to enable this, we really need to agree on the structure for the metadata, right? Yeah. Because until we agree on that would be very hard to even figure out where things should be.
I mean, but they already have the data, and looking at the data is not that difficult. So blah blah.
No.
No, I'm talking on our side. Yeah.
On our side. So I to be fair, I actually think that, and I always say this, I always feel that the people who writing.
We lost him.
Okay, I thought it was me again, and I'm like, no way.
It was him.
I have again the bad luck of being presenting and so basically I have been playing around with the website. Oh, there you are. You're back.
Yeah, we didn't hear the last minute or so, Dennis.
Oh, sorry.
You completely froze. No one. Yeah.
Oh, really? So what I was saying is, I think it's very important that you control the clients, the first generation of clients, and in this case, I think we should be looking at adding 2 integrations, right? One for the PDF and one for the website, and then you make sure that you have the data set. So in a way, I'll expand your dream a little bit. It's like, I think what you want is to have a session where you add a couple more use cases, a couple more use stories, etc., and then send it to a pull request, merge into your repo, and automatically you get a PDF built, you get a website, you get something published with those changes on it, right?
Yes,
Because
that's the end scenario. So that's exactly what I'm working for internally in my company. So most of the contribution I made was because I spent some time in the working on company time on creating these stories for my developers.
Yeah, and that for me is very interesting, because for me the one thing that was always a block for me on even at ASVS and to push it to the teams is that I need 1/10 of that, right? I need to start with 15% of it. So it's almost like we need to say, here's a team, this is all the stories that they care about right now. This is the things that almost I want them to care about right now. I now need to create a PDF, a website that only has that, right? Because everything else is just overwhelming. It's just noise, right? I like the fact that you already think of customizing it. So I definitely, let's get some action going on here, right? To create those versions and that model of forking.
That's the idea, right? So the what I showed from the OWASP ASVS means the build environment for creating PDFs out of Markdown is there.
Have you looked at actually adding your content into that original Markdown?
Pandoc doesn't care.
Pandoc will create. Of course, right?
The only thing and that's the reason I was not arguing, but saying that I'd rather have less files than more files, because then it's easier to number them. So if you look at the structure on, oh God, I think I need to order my browser a little bit better to be able to have this discussion with you guys. Sorry, it's just trying to tidy up a little bit, not to have
question there. Where are you storing your Jupyter notebooks? Are you capturing them here?
Could you repeat that, please?
You said you created some Jupyter notebooks. Have you published that in a Git repo?
No. That was just a one-off thing. I'm not even sure where I have it. Last time I
all right, don't worry about it. Okay, that's all. I didn't want to break your mojo. Okay, so I was just thinking if you had it there, because you can put it on that repo, right? And it kind of makes it's easy to also to collaborate and to start. In fact, if you look at
right, so it's here. So I have here my my Jupyter notebook.
Yeah.
And somewhere here, I just started it, did it, and I never even bothered to make sense out of it. I just created a one-off script because it was a one-off job. It was not something to be repeated. Because this one was just parsing data from the ASVS, right? Now we have a different format. So we need to figure out what makes sense in the context of the format that we created for the stories, and we need to agree on the content. So the proposal I made has a very clear structure. The handcrafted files don't have this clear structure exactly the same way. That will lead to, obviously, by machine reading, not finding the things where you expect them to be found. So you cannot create a dictionary in memory that has all this information for working with JSON or querying.
Yes, but that's why I was basically saying, I think in the past, where if you add that Markdown attributes at the top, then that simplifies that problem completely.
Sure,
right?
Sure
because when you, in fact, I was just looking, because I remember we did something like this. If you look at the Open Security Summit repo, the latest one, there's actually some notebooks. In fact, there's an API that knows how to read Markdown, which might help quite a bit. And then read Markdown with the attributes. So it's in Python, so you can create those that bit. But because I know we talked about the past, but have you added? You know the Markdown pages. You guys still don't use attributes at the top, right?
No, we're not using them.
Yeah, not yet.
because that will make a big difference, right? Because if you can add the attributes at the top, then you can basically say where this is supposed to go. You can have some metadata. You can even say the status of it. It becomes easier to load it all up in memory, right? Because,
as long as this metadata is understood by Pandoc.
Yep.
No. So this is what I think is really interesting, right? I think you're going to have to insert this into the other content, right?
Think we're talking past each other. So could you elaborate on your story to understand it better?
So I'm thinking that you want to inject the current content that you have today, right, as a story in the middle of the ASVS content.
No,
right?
No, we're too far away. It's impossible. So the problem lays in that ASVS, the content is a table. And from one statement here, we have created even a series of stories, because sometimes what is just a one sentence here means 3 or 4 different scenarios because of the implications of the CWE and how it is phrased. So I don't expect any backwards compatibility to the ASVS. That is why in the format I proposed, the ASVS statement is kept. But now our stories and our Gherkin stories are kept separate. And that which I would like to have is just the Gherkin stories added.
But just go back to that page. I got a page. Just go back where you were. I think I'm thinking that you want to add to this document, right? So you want to make sure that in between, above that 5.5.2, you now have the content that you guys developed, right?
But we have it. The problem here is or was I started with the ASVS to explain how it worked, right? Now we have come very far from it. So if we look at the files that we have been creating, give me just a second. Mario Platt, GitHub. So this one, for example, right? So if you look at these files here.
So I missed just a couple of seconds. You said the problem here was what?
I'm trying to get there, right? So let me go to ASVS English files, resources. So this is the ASVS for files.
Yeah.
Now this is our version for files.
Yeah.
So the scenarios we have, and here we have one of the problems, right? So this file is not, this file was handcrafted, doesn't have the statements as we created them. I'm not sure whether this is really the same one we worked on together, but we have a different format here. So yes, we could insert this here in the table, but then it would be unreadable.
No, I'm not saying on the table, I'm saying below, right? So if you look, you have V12.1, right? So if you go to your V12.1, which should be above, right? That, but a bit higher up, right? So you want to put that content, right? V12.1, where is it?
Give me a second. I might be able to show you that. Just give me a second to be able to show you that.
Because that's the power, right? Like the power is if and I think it's also important to be able to create a version of that document that doesn't have all the content, right? But if you have that, then when I print that PDF, right, I can then see those use cases, right? I can see the stories.
Yeah, this looks a lot better. So I'm not sure how to show this without leaking a lot of internal information. Okay, I'll try my best. Okay, sorry. Okay, so this is the internal version of that document I have, right? So it's ASVS. So I have taken, or let me put it, well, it's better here because then I can split screen. So this is the original file. So on the right-hand side is the ASVS, on the left-hand side is the Gherkin stories file.
Yeah.
So I keep the link, right?
Yeah,
between
exactly,
that one
right?
and that one. I keep the applicability,
Mm-hmm.
and I keep the user stories. And to be honest, I don't want this as PDF. This is good enough for me as PDF. Now, what I want out of this is to be able to embed it here and embed it as a Gherkin story in this fashion into the deliverables, into the story that they're building, right? So as part of the acceptance criteria, to be able to say that you have done the file upload function, you have to also implement this one here and that one there and that one there, right?
Okay. But just so practically speaking, so what you're basically saying on the right, you want something that just you go expand and then you see those stories, right? Like literally as on the left, right?
Yes.
Like that you want in the middle of this. That's
yes,
what you
I want this in the middle of this, but that's a security knowledge framework.
Okay.
I don't want to change the ASVS or even touch it because I think the people behind the ASVS didn't really show that much interest into the Gherkin stories.
No.
Yeah, but but this is the interesting part, right? Like, you know, we can implement that, right? You know, because, you know, even if it doesn't get merged initially, right? I think some of these things is, you know,
well, I had an issue open with the ASVS for about 6 months, and then it was closed. That it would probably sit better elsewhere. That's why I had the conversation with that Blazing Girl, I think, that was doing the testing guide. It was started being there, but then she also thought it was not the best place, so that's why we started this project. So we already went through all of those houses.
Exactly.
So basically, I think we're catering to different audiences. Yeah. So it's the same content, but we're catering to different audiences.
Yeah. But
so what I think would be useful in terms of the build of the PDF is, as you've done for yours with having actual links for CWE. It's potentially something that we could have the links to the stories, right? When building that view internally.
Certainly, I mean, you can even point it to another document, or we could enhance as an appendix to the ASVS these things. Now, these things will generate hundreds of pages, right? Because it's a lot of text that we have created, and all that. So
SKF is a better way. Yeah, agree.
Yeah, the question is, don't you want to create a website? Because we can create a Hugo-based website, right? Similar to the one that the security framework has created, right? You can create a web, because then you can link to that page directly, right? Because you almost want a unique link, right? You kind of want a way to link directly to that user story, isn't it?
Certainly. So just like here, I want to link from 400 to something else. So just like I want to link from here to CWE, we could add here to I don't know, stories, or you want to call it whatever you want, right? So and that doesn't cost any sweat. You don't sweat it really. It's very easy because you still have the reference here. So it's just Markdown, and you reference it, the file and the hash and the title or the subtitle, and that's it.
So maybe that's one of the projects that we could think of, which is to create a static site, right, based on the content for user stories, right? That you can then hyperlink to.
Sure. This is what we can do, and I mean, one thing here again is I'm not sure if I have it here, but you can link to your internal requirements. So one thing I have been doing is I have been adding here to the ASVS requirement, in some cases, my internal compliance policies. So I link to the document number and to the specific requirement, because solving this solves the other requirement. And eventually, maybe even we can get rid of some of the other documents that are worded so complicated by doing this. So the idea here is, and I'm talking to the data privacy guys, and they love the idea because they could create their documents here, the policies. We could merge these somehow with Azure DevOps boards or with Jira or whatever you're using for ticketing, and you get perfect visibility into the compliance status of any project based on what they have done with these tickets. So you have compliance as code out of the way, and now you're no longer the brake in the system. You're no longer the sand in the gear. You are enabling, you're the oil that enables them to just push into production because they have traceability of all their compliance requirements.
Yeah, and they checked it. Cool.
So I think there's a lot of power here. Of course, we need to finish these things. We need to figure out the best way to either transform that into something that makes sense for us. So we could always refer to the original one, but in a Creative Commons way, you can always enhance it with a link to these things. And further, the possibility behind the security knowledge framework is just so amazing, because you can just create these lists based on what you want, based on a few questions. And the content is already very good.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think that it has to be there, right? I think that's the key there, right? And I feel like actually creating that site, which is again independent. We shouldn't, but again, we should try to leverage as much as the content and the structure they have here, right? And also, like the summit, we already use Hugo for content, right? So I was actually thinking. I remember the first time I looked at the project, going, "Hey, it'd be really cool to just have a website that you can link to, right? That has all the latest version of the content, that has all the information." So Hugo basically is the technology that we use, which is the static site generator. So it just creates all the pages you want to go, and it's really, really fast. So it's a pretty cool technology to use.
I'm sold. Now let us finish this thing first, and then we can do the site. But I still believe that having everything in one place is not the way to go. Having all the requirements listed in this way is not the way to go, because no one ever looks into it.
Well, I think it depends if you can filter this down. I think the first step of this is to create a customized version of the document. I think the second part of that is to be able to remove the bits that are not relevant, right? And I think until you can do that, you're right, it becomes an insane document. But actually, when you have the lighter version of ASVS that only has the content that is needed, then actually those user stories make a lot of sense. In fact, those user stories bring this to life, right? Because the problem with this is that when I look at it, I go, well, what do you mean by that, right? And actually the user stories, I still feel that the point of the user stories is not to have 4, is to have 10, 20, 30, that almost then allows you to put context into this. So it's almost like depending on your application, depending on your environment, depending on your risk, you actually have different user stories, right? Because there's different requirements, right, that you have depending on what you have in front of you, right?
And in a lot of them, we also have the links to OWASP cheat sheets as well.
Exactly. Yeah. But this is why ultimately we need to build a graph of this, right? Because it's basically it's a massive graph, and then you almost choose which part of it you care at that moment in time, and that's where you create a site, or that's where you visualize, kind of like what the security framework guys did, right? They then ask you 5 or 6 questions, and they're going, boom, that's what you care about. But I think for a company like one for me that I'm interested in is I want to create one of these per product, right? Or even per team, because each team has different focus, right? And they have different areas of responsibilities, right? So I only want them to focus on the bit that is relevant to them. So then I want them to, like you said, be able to, we want to say, if you've done this and you check this and it's go, then you guys can ship to production with no worries. If you haven't done that, then you can't. Cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna have the week after next. I'm gonna have a lot of time. I should have at least 1 week out, and I plan to spend a lot of time building the last few.
Yeah, let's sync up a bit. I'm also gonna take some time off over Christmas, right? So let's before the next summit. Don't feel free, right, Mario and Luis, right? I have some ideas on how to implement this, and maybe that's an area that I can focus a bit on, which is basically creating the static version of this site and giving some ideas on maybe some ways to store the data that will make it easier or less easy.
So for me, I think there are two things that are kind of critical next on this. The first one is to one of them is finishing the whole standard, so that then things get easier. And the second one, which we can probably start looking at sooner, is really review the structure at the moment that we have for metadata, what fields would be important to be able to reference. And because at the moment, as you've all seen, we've got a requirement descriptions, user story, scenario, validations. I think it would be a good idea for us to review if that's the given the objective of tying this in on one hand back to ASVS and on the other hand to things like cheat sheets, etc. What would be the right metadata to have on it?
Yeah. But I think as important as that is just to create a CI pipeline that creates, and consumes and creates the artifacts, right? Because then that gives you the ability to iterate reasonably fast on it.
Yep.
So, cool.
Sounds good. Look, I'm completely knackered today. I've been sick for 2 days. I'm not sure I have the energy to go much more. But
no, this is good.
But is there anything else that you'd like to do today? Would you want to work kind of one story? Do we leave it here? Any other thoughts on that?
For me, I think we can leave it here for the day.
Okay.
We can. I'll try to see what the stories are, and I will make a pull request to the Open Security Summit ASVS user stories to try to formalize the output so that they all have the same structure. And I will try to create, based on the latest bleeding edge ASVS, all the requirements with all the user stories that we already have in there. And then we can just work in one file. And then I still believe it's easier not to have folders, but to have files.
Okay. Sounds good.
And just have one file. It makes life a little bit easier, but I don't know, unless you're very strong, opinionated about having folders and a lot of files, I would suggest just having one file for all, and it's good enough for me.
Let's catch up on the OSS Slack channel. So for everyone else on the session now, on the Open Security Summit, we have a Slack channel for this project, which the name is
Project ASVS Stories, I think.
Yeah.
So Louis, the only thing I would say is that when you are creating stuff programmatically, it will, especially on the metadata, the best level of granularity is applying metadata where that is, right? And that's why I my instinct is if you have a folder, because you expand the user stories quite a lot, and your granularity, like if you look at the page you showed, that was almost the page, right? Because you had that as a markdown page, right? That for me is where the metadata should be. That's what it should be, a separate file. But I think, to be honest, like it's a question of what are we going to use to put the markdown, the metadata in, right? Because you could have it separately,
I mean, the thing is one of source versus output for consumption, right? So what is more comfortable to work with you as a creator of content, and the other one is having the liberty of creating output in any format, including Markdown.
Yeah.
I could even split the big file into smaller files that can be consumed in the website. I can even generate native HTML instead of Markdown. I can generate a lot of things, right?
Yeah. But you need a place to put the metadata. That's the thing, right? So for me, what I would interested to see is that if you have a big file, where are you going to put metadata? And to be honest, like, if you're having to use regex to parse the content, that is very flaky, right? It's really not a good way of doing it, right? So either you have separate YAML files or you put the metadata in the Markdown itself, right? File.
But I mean, glad to look into that. If you have an example, but glad to look into that. So far, I have been doing what I need to do.
Have you seen how the Summit site is built?
Which site?
The Summit website. When you create your session, have you seen how it's actually built from Hugo?
No, I haven't.
If you go to this session and you click on Edit, at the bottom of the page, you'll see basically the HTML page. You see the Markdown page, and you see that at the top you got the metadata. Actually, maybe you want to share your screen. I'll just walk you through it.
I'm on it. I'm on it.
So that works really well, and that's why. So if you go to pick this session, right? Pick this session, and if you go edit this page, so can you see? Yeah, just you can fork it.
I forked the repo. No worries.
Can you see where the metadata is?
This is the metadata.
that's the metadata, right? So if you think about it, like this, the summit site feels like a database-driven website, right? Everything is hyperlinked. If you go to your session, it links to your sessions. The schedule links to the schedule. But we update here, right? So when we want to change the session, we just change one of these numbers. We change one of these things, and then everything else goes together, right? So you can see there's the Markdown section, and at the top you've got the metadata.
I see. It's fantastic. I haven't thought of it this way.
Makes parsing much simpler, right? I think because it's everything at the top, less opportunities for.
No, yeah, especially because you have already variable and value, so that makes it easier to actually assign the value to the variable.
Exactly, right, and that's that's fundamentally right. And actually, the other thing, if you're there, that you might find interesting, if you go up, right, and this was written almost 2 years ago, but what we also have there is if you go to the repository, go to the root, right, see where it says notebooks. So what we did, because I don't know if you remember, Mario, where the last summit you could actually change the content from Twitter, not from Twitter, from Slack. We had a Slack bot that actually was able to register and register sessions. It was done like this. So for example, if you go to views, I'll show you first some of the outputs. These are notebooks, right, that we're actually using to manage stuff. So click on one of those, for example. So this is actually a notebook that uses the API that is created that actually, so you could see there is actually, I don't know if you know pandas, yeah, so this is using a pandas, right, to display some of the data. But if you actually run this notebook, you'll see that data kind of already mapped, right? So this is, and this guy here, this information is being created and massaged. If you go to Notebooks API, if you go one more up, and you go API, so basically OSS Hugo. So basically here, what you got, for example, if you go, I think the top one, API Hugo OSS. So this is the API that actually knows how to parse the files and give you a Python object with all the content, right? So once you have that, then it was easy, like to just, for example, create metadata files, right? And pandas. So for example, if you look at that, let's say that's line 100. So and this actually was also merging stuff with spreadsheets. So you can see df of data on site, and then that basically gets you the data. And then you were creating a data frame that then you share, right? In fact, if you look at line 98, this is merging data from Hugo on the site with data from a spreadsheet, right? So we were using this to manage the participants and the schedule and the villas and because if you think this session is complicated, you should see when we had the real summit, right, where you had literally hundreds of sessions, right, with hundreds of participants, all wanting to do different things, right? So we actually built an API to manage this whole thing, which worked really well.
I see. I mean, this is brilliant. I hadn't looked into it. This is in my heart how I wanted to do it. Yeah. I hadn't come up with a solution of embedding the Markdown into it, but actually it makes more sense. So
I'm happy to help with this because we do that all the time, right? In fact, when I'm making some changes to the Google site, and I'm using that, right? So I'm more than happy to help on that level. I understand.
The thing that would make sense now is to create. Because I know I have a workbook here somewhere. Where's the workbook? I had a workbook somewhere here.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's. Yeah, those are your checkpoints.
Yeah, those are the checkpoints. I don't know. I know I have the workbook somewhere, but that's basically what I was doing now. Now this is a lot better because now the files can be changed and that's something that we could even propose to the ASVS, right? So
yeah,
that would make it easier to generate the document less flaky from the perspective of the script that they're creating for working with.
Oh, I completely agree with you. Yeah. But I think we can start in our world, right? This is a good example of let's make it work for us, right? For this project, and then it's easy to also show, hey, you guys can do this, in your way. I think it's always important to remove variables that you don't control, right? Like if we depend on those guys to do something, then we can get stuck, right?
I mean we cannot depend on them. So anything we do, we can offer as a byproduct of our effort. But this is a project in its own, of its own, right? So it's
one more little trick. If you go up, I'll show you one more little thing, maybe on Python. You go to the root, right? So this is designed that if you start the notebook from here, can you see that there's an IPython profile? No, above. So go up, see that guy? So what is this? If you point your Jupyter Notebook server to the root of the Security Summit, which actually means you can clone this and open this in one of the public, viewers, right? If you go into that file and you go into that config environment, you can see the trick. The trick is this file runs before every notebook, and you can see that it's just mapping the API, because it depends where you load. You want to find it, and then loads up that OSS Hugo. See there? So the trick here is that it then doesn't matter in which direction you are when you create those notebooks, you always get that API. And that was super useful, because then we could use the notebooks in a way, almost as a way to develop the framework. So cool. Well, I think
sounds great. I'm a little bit in awe, and then I have to probably digest this over the next few days. It's a lot to work with, but I mean, I love the concept because it makes life a lot easier.
Yeah. And for me, what I really like about this is one of the things I really want to see is lots of kind of mini sites with content. So I think this is the first one. You guys have great content, but like when we talk about threat modeling, it's the same thing. We want to consolidate a lot of that information, map that out, right? Some of the other projects that we are kind of bubbling around on the summit, right, is the same principle. So I like this idea that we can create a schema and a format that you take a repo, you put the content here, and then you get this website, you get this integration. So yeah, let's work on it.
Sounds great.
Cool. Let's work on the structure for that over Slack. Let's catch up next week, and we can take it from there.
Perfect.
Sure, let's do that. Nice. I know. Any questions from the audience? Everyone's so quiet.
Yeah, we got on a massive tangent here. It's good. Yeah.
Doesn't look like it.
Well done.
Well done.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you all for joining. And let's catch up on Slack next week.
Yep. Sounds good.
Thank you so much.
Hey, Adam.